Apa gue juga bisa?
Bisa dong. Di sini sudah ada simulasi bagi para teknisi sesuai kebutuhan lo.
Serius lo?
Serius? Nah, lo mau apa nih? Mau belajar relay proteksi? Pemasangan scaffolding? Tower emergency? Ada semuanya.
Oke. Gue suka
Recording in
nih.
Nggak cuma
progress.
itu loh, ada nih yang namanya Corpu tuh. Di sini lo bisa belajar sharing praktek kerja dan aktivitas kerja secara visual. Bahkan di fitur reference learning, lo bisa cari sumber-sumber buku yang gak hanya dari PLN aja. Serta masih banyak lagi.
Ini dia yang selama ini gue cari.
Makanya, ayo tambah wawasan lo dengan cara kekinian, biar gak halu doang. Buruan download aplikasinya, atau langsung aja lo akses landing page-nya di digilearn.pln.co.id. PLN Digilearn, anytime, anywhere, and any device.
Dengan jumlah pegawai lebih dari 53.000 dan tenaga kerja total sekitar 186.000 orang, pengelolaan sumber daya manusia di PLN Group dilakukan secara digital dengan sistem yang disebut Human Experience Management System. Sistem ini dirancang untuk mengembangkan potensi terbaik pegawai dalam mendorong bisnis di PLN Group yang berpusat pada values dan experiences. Dua hal ini kemudian di-cascading untuk menghasilkan 4R, yaitu right size, right skill, right span, dan right system. PLN Group juga telah memiliki peta jalan pengembangan human capital sampai dengan tahun 2025. Dengan visi menjadi perusahaan listrik terkemuka se-Asia Tenggara dan nomor 1 pilihan pelanggan untuk solusi energi, transformasi human capital PLN sangatlah vital. Karena keberhasilan mewujudkan visi tersebut ditentukan oleh pengelolaan dan pengembangan manusianya.
Tuntutlah ilmu sampai ke negeri Cina. Ilmu kok dituntut?
Ilmu tuh nggak perlu dituntut, ilmu tuh dipelajarin. Kayak gue nih.
Masih zaman pakai cara itu.
So?
Tenang sob, yang salah tuh kalau kita nggak mau belajar. Sekarang ada sistem aplikasi pembelajaran berbasis teknologi. Iya, namanya PLN Digilearn. Di sini lo bisa belajar apa aja. Ada 4 menu utama yang bisa lo akses. Ada My Learning, Learning Room, Learning on Demand, dan Learning Support. Masih penasaran? Jadi semuanya itu udah dikemas dalam penyajian materi yang menarik sob. Ada yang dalam bentuk tekstual, terus bite size audio learning, juga visual dalam bentuk video yang asik. Nah, yang paling seru nih, ada virtual reality game-nya. Intinya ya, lo bisa belajar kapan aja, di mana aja, dan pakai perangkat apa aja.
Keren banget. Ada lagi nggak?
Gua kasih tahu lagi nih, lo bisa belajar sesuai dengan jabatan lo. Bahkan, belajar satu level di atas jabatan lo saat ini.
Menarik banget. By the way, bisa belajar bareng nggak ya?
Bisa dong, ini kan yang lo pengen. Zaman now, lo bisa belajar bareng dengan pegawai lain dalam satu ruang belajar digital yang sama. Nggak cuma itu, lo bisa tatap muka langsung dengan instruktur yang telah ditunjuk, yang pastinya udah expert di bidangnya.
Sudah membantu kelancaran pada acara hari ini.
Terus ujiannya gimana?
Don't worry, di sini lo akan mendapatkan evaluasi tingkat pemahaman hasil belajar lo. Bakalan beda cerita kalau lo nggak mau belajar. Haha, gimana?
Great, ini dia yang gue mau.
Gue kan selalu di lapangan. Apa gue juga bisa?
Bisa dong. Di sini sudah ada simulasi bagi para teknisi sesuai kebutuhan lo.
Serius lo?
Serius? Nah, lo mau apa nih? Mau belajar relay proteksi? Pemasangan scaffolding? Tower emergency? Ada semuanya.
Oke. Gue suka nih.
Nggak cuma itu loh, ada nih yang namanya Corpu tuh. Di Di sini lo bisa belajar sharing praktek kerja dan aktivitas kerja secara visual. Bahkan di fitur reference learning, lo bisa cari sumber-sumber buku yang gak hanya dari PLN aja. Serta masih banyak lagi.
Ini dia yang selama ini gue cari.
Makanya, ayo tambah wawasan lo dengan cara kekinian, biar gak halu doang. Buruan download aplikasinya, atau langsung aja lo akses landing page-nya di digilearn.pln.co.id.
PLN Digilearn, anytime, anywhere, and any device.
Tantangan yang kita hadapi bergeser, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Kita berbicara tantangan yang sangat kompleks. Dulu di tahun 2015-2014 kita mengalami defisit, kemudian di saat itu juga ada prediksi pertumbuhan demand kita sekitar 8,6%. Tapi nyatanya selama 5 tahun pertumbuhan demand kita hanya sekitar 4,6%. Apa yang menjadi masalah? Pertama adalah elasticity of demand itu bergeser. Dulu 1,3, 1% pertumbuhan ekonomi, sekitar 1,3% pertumbuhan demand. Kemudian juga di sini ada ambiguity. Jadi ada lack of clarity meaning of event. Kalau bahasanya itu lebih gampangnya itu ada causal relationship. Satu event mempengaruhi event yang lain. Kemudian di sini juga ada volatility, ada pergerakan. Dulu diprediksi akan ada pertambahan demand listrik yang banyak sekali. Kawasan ekonomi khusus terbangun, ada investasi, ada industrialisasi. Ternyata pergerakan ekonomi bergeser menjadi pergerakan ekonomi yang berbasis pada pelayanan. Transisi ke low carbon. Kemudian ada juga tarif. Ada juga masalah fluktuasi dari harga energi primer di internasional yang mempengaruhi kita semuanya. Nah, untuk itu perlu adanya suatu VUCA juga. Tetapi kali ini perlu adanya vision. We're going to be the best power and utility company in Southeast Asia. Nah, beliau juga sudah memerintahkan di awal dulu. Begitu beliau itu menjabat sebagai dirut, beliau memerintahkan dampaknya COVID ini seperti apa. Dampaknya terhadap kita, baik itu operasional, secara komersial, secara teknis, secara finansial, dan lain-lain. Kemudian disinilah muncul perlu adanya clarity. Kenapa Pak Zul memerintahkan itu di awal-awal? Karena adanya clarity. Pada waktu itu sudah muncul satu, misalnya demand pesimis. Kalau moderat itu seperti apa, optimis seperti apa, dan kita tahu persis kalau ini seperti ini, variabelnya akan bergeser dari pesimis menjadi moderat menjadi optimis. Makanya di sini ada suatu understanding. Nah, tentu saja dengan adanya understanding ini, kita paham itu seperti apa medan tempur yang kita hadapi. Di sini muncul agility. Coba bayangkan suatu ketika ada suatu race namanya Formula 1. Jalannya itu aspal halus sekali. Nah, di tengah jalan ternyata Formula 1 race-nya itu dihentikan. Pagarnya dibuka, kemudian diminta untuk off-road. Nggak mungkin mobil Formula 1 menjadi off-road. Nah, untuk itu diperlukan suatu pergeseran juga skill sets. Kalau dulu misalnya fluktuasi hanya di demand, ke depan fluktuasi juga dari pasokan karena banyak sekali variabel renewable energy yang harus bisa masuk ke dalam sistem kita. Dengan adanya suatu pergeseran seperti ini perlu kontrak-kontrak yang jauh lebih fleksibel, yang bisa juga autokorektif. Karena ini semuanya bergeser. Kita hitung rate of return tertentu. Ternyata ini bergeser, demand tidak tercapai. Ternyata ada fluktuasi dari energi primer. Tapi ternyata kontrak-kontrak kita di pack tidak mampu mempertimbangkan fluktuasi dinamika yang sangat cepat tersebut. Akibatnya banyak sekali kontrak-kontrak kita yang dulunya fair. Dengan adanya pergeseran ini, sekarang tidak fair lagi. Tidak well balanced. Tetapi yang menjadi masalah harusnya kan kontrak itu autokorektif. Tapi kali ini ya kita terpaksa melakukan renegosiasi. Renegosiasi itu tentu saja banyak sekali downside-nya. Kita perlu digitalisasi. Kita perlu suatu risk. Risk itu sudah menjadikan suatu insting. Dan banyak lagi bagaimana kita perlu juga melakukan inovasi pengembangan teknologi agar PLN selalu tetap kompetitif. How we going to be able to transition? With that new challenge, we need a new set of technical knowledge, a new set of technical know-how, a new set of innovation. Dan we are at the crossroad. Untuk itu saya mengucapkan selamat dengan adanya Human Capital Series ini. Semoga diskusinya bisa produktif. Selamat untuk melakukan suatu seminar. Semoga ini lancar dan semoga bermanfaat. Terima kasih. Tantangan yang kita hadapi bergeser. VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Kita berbicara tantangan yang sangat kompleks. Dulu di tahun 2015-2014 kita mengalami defisit, kemudian di saat itu juga ada prediksi pertumbuhan demand kita sekitar 8,6%. Tapi nyatanya selama 5 tahun pertumbuhan demand kita hanya sekitar 4,6%. Apa yang menjadi masalah? Pertama adalah elasticity of demand itu bergeser. Dulu 1,3, 1% pertumbuhan ekonomi, sekitar 1,3% pertumbuhan demand. Kemudian juga di sini ada ambiguity. Jadi ada lack of clarity meaning of event. Kalau bahasanya itu lebih gampangnya itu ada causal relationship. Satu event mempengaruhi event yang lain. Kemudian di sini juga ada volatility, ada pergerakan. Dulu diprediksi akan ada pertambahan demand listrik yang banyak sekali. Kawasan ekonomi khusus terbangun, ada investasi, ada industrialisasi. Ternyata pergerakan ekonomi bergeser menjadi pergerakan ekonomi yang berbasis pada pelayanan. Transisi ke low carbon. Kemudian ada juga tarif. Ada juga masalah fluktuasi dari harga energi primer di internasional yang mempengaruhi kita semuanya. Nah, untuk itu perlu adanya suatu VUCA juga. Tetapi kali ini perlu adanya vision. We going to be the best power and utility company in Southeast Asia. Nah, beliau juga sudah memerintahkan di awal dulu. Begitu beliau itu menjabat sebagai dirut, beliau memerintahkan dampaknya COVID ini seperti apa. Dampaknya terhadap kita, baik itu operasional, secara komersial, secara teknis, secara finansial, dan lain-lain. Kemudian disinilah muncul perlu adanya clarity. Kenapa Pak Zul memerintahkan itu di awal-awal? Karena adanya clarity. Pada waktu itu sudah muncul satu, misalnya demand pesimis. Kalau moderat itu seperti apa, optimis seperti apa, dan kita tahu persis kalau ini seperti ini, variabelnya akan bergeser dari pesimis menjadi moderat menjadi optimis. Makanya di sini ada suatu understanding. Nah, tentu saja dengan adanya understanding ini kita paham itu seperti apa medan tempur yang kita hadapi. Di sini muncul agility. Coba bayangkan suatu ketika ada suatu race namanya Formula 1. Jalannya itu aspal halus sekali. Nah, di tengah jalan ternyata Formula 1 race-nya itu dihentikan. Pagarnya dibuka kemudian diminta untuk off-road. Nggak mungkin mobil Formula 1 menjadi off-road. Nah, untuk itu diperlukan suatu pergeseran juga skill sets. Kalau dulu misalnya fluktuasi hanya di demand, ke depan fluktuasi juga dari pasokan karena banyak sekali variabel renewable energy yang harus bisa masuk ke dalam sistem kita. Dengan adanya suatu pergeseran seperti ini perlu kontrak-kontrak yang jauh lebih fleksibel, yang bisa juga autokorektif. Karena ini semuanya bergeser. Kita hitung rate of return tertentu. Ternyata ini bergeser, demand tidak tercapai. Ternyata ada fluktuasi dari energi primer. Tapi ternyata kontrak-kontrak kita di PEC tidak mampu mempertimbangkan fluktuasi dinamika yang sangat cepat tersebut. Akibatnya banyak sekali kontrak-kontrak kita yang dulunya fair. Dengan adanya pergeseran ini, sekarang tidak fair lagi. Tidak well balanced. Tetapi yang menjadi masalah harusnya kan kontrak itu autokorektif. Tapi kali ini ya kita terpaksa melakukan renegosiasi. Renegosiasi itu tentu saja banyak sekali downside-nya. Kita perlu digitalisasi. Kita perlu suatu risk. Risk itu sudah menjadikan suatu insting. Dan banyak lagi bagaimana kita perlu juga melakukan inovasi pengembangan teknologi agar PLN selalu tetap kompetitif. How we going to be able to transition? With that new challenge, we need a new set of technical knowledge, a new set of technical know-how, a a new set of innovation. Dan we are at the crossroad. Untuk itu saya mengucapkan selamat dengan adanya Human Capital Series ini. Semoga diskusinya bisa produktif. Selamat untuk melakukan suatu seminar. Semoga ini lancar dan semoga bermanfaat. Terima kasih.
Dengan jumlah pegawai lebih dari 53.000 dan tenaga kerja total sekitar 186.000 orang, pengelolaan sumber daya manusia di PLN Group dilakukan secara digital dengan sistem yang disebut Human Experience Management System. Sistem ini dirancang untuk mengembangkan potensi terbaik pegawai dalam mendorong bisnis di PLN Group yang berpusat pada values dan experiences. Dua hal ini kemudian di-cascading untuk menghasilkan 4R, yaitu right size, right skill, right spend, dan right system. PLN Group juga telah memiliki peta jalan pengembangan human capital sampai dengan tahun 2025. Dengan visi menjadi perusahaan listrik terkemuka se-Asia Tenggara dan nomor 1 pilihan pelanggan untuk solusi energi, transformasi human capital PLN sangatlah vital. Karena keberhasilan mewujudkan visi tersebut ditentukan oleh pengelolaan dan pengembangan manusianya.
Tantangan yang kita hadapi bergeser. VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Kita berbicara tantangan yang sangat kompleks. Dulu di tahun 2015-2014 kita mengalami defisit, kemudian di saat itu juga ada prediksi pertumbuhan demand kita sekitar 8,6%. Tapi nyatanya selama 5 tahun pertumbuhan demand kita hanya sekitar 4,6%. Apa yang menjadi masalah? Pertama adalah elasticity of demand itu bergeser. Dulu 1,3, 1% pertumbuhan ekonomi, sekitar 1,3% pertumbuhan demand. Kemudian juga di sini ada ambiguity. Jadi ada lack of clarity meaning of event. Kalau bahasanya itu lebih gampangnya itu ada causal relationship. Satu event mempengaruhi event yang lain. Kemudian di sini juga ada volatility, ada pergerakan. Dulu diprediksi akan ada pertambahan demand listrik yang banyak sekali. Kawasan ekonomi khusus terbangun, ada investasi, ada industrialisasi. Ternyata pergerakan ekonomi bergeser menjadi pergerakan ekonomi yang berbasis pada pelayanan. Transisi ke low carbon. Kemudian ada juga tarif. Ada juga masalah fluktuasi dari harga energi primer di internasional yang mempengaruhi kita semuanya. Nah, untuk itu perlu adanya suatu VUCA juga. Tetapi kali ini perlu adanya vision. We going to be the best power and utility company in Southeast Asia. Nah, beliau juga sudah memerintahkan di awal dulu. Begitu beliau itu menjabat sebagai dirut, beliau memerintahkan dampaknya COVID ini seperti apa. Dampaknya terhadap kita, baik itu operasional, secara komersial, secara teknis, secara finansial, dan lain-lain. Kemudian disinilah muncul perlu adanya clarity. Kenapa Pak Zul memerintahkan itu di awal-awal? Karena adanya clarity. Pada waktu itu sudah muncul satu, misalnya demand pesimis. Kalau moderat itu seperti apa, optimis seperti apa, dan kita tahu persis kalau ini seperti ini, variabelnya akan bergeser dari pesimis menjadi moderat menjadi optimis. Makanya di sini ada suatu understanding. Nah, tentu saja dengan adanya understanding ini kita paham itu seperti apa medan tempur yang kita hadapi. Di sini muncul agility. Coba bayangkan suatu ketika ada suatu race namanya Formula 1. Jalannya itu aspal halus sekali. Nah, di tengah jalan ternyata Formula 1 race-nya itu dihentikan. Pagarnya dibuka kemudian diminta untuk off-road. Nggak mungkin mobil Formula 1 menjadi off-road. Nah, untuk itu diperlukan suatu pergeseran juga skill sets. Kalau dulu misalnya fluktuasi hanya di demand, ke depan fluktuasi juga dari pasokan karena banyak sekali variabel renewable energy yang harus bisa masuk ke dalam sistem kita. Dengan adanya suatu pergeseran seperti ini perlu kontrak-kontrak yang jauh lebih fleksibel, yang bisa juga autokorektif. Karena ini semuanya bergeser. Kita hitung rate of return tertentu. Ternyata ini bergeser, demand tidak tercapai. Ternyata ada fluktuasi dari energi primer. Tapi ternyata kontrak-kontrak kita di PEC tidak mampu mempertimbangkan fluktuasi dinamika yang sangat cepat tersebut. Akibatnya banyak sekali kontrak-kontrak kita yang dulunya fair. Dengan adanya pergeseran ini, sekarang tidak fair lagi, tidak well balanced. Tetapi yang menjadi masalah harusnya kan kontrak itu otokorektif. Tapi kali ini ya kita terpaksa melakukan renegosiasi. Renegosiasi itu tentu saja banyak sekali downside-nya. Kita perlu digitalisasi, kita perlu suatu risk. Risk itu sudah menjadikan suatu insting. Dan banyak lagi bagaimana kita perlu juga melakukan inovasi pengembangan teknologi agar PLN selalu tetap kompetitif. How we going to be able to transition with that new challenge? We need a new set of technical knowledge, a new set of technical know-how, a new set of innovation. Dan we are at the crossroad. Untuk itu saya mengucapkan selamat dengan adanya Human Capital Series ini. Semoga diskusinya bisa produktif. Selamat untuk melakukan suatu seminar. Semoga ini lancar dan semoga bermanfaat. Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Puji syukur kepada Tuhan Yang Maha Kuasa, karena atas rahmat-Nya kita dapat berkumpul pada hari ini dalam kondisi yang sehat meski masih dalam platform online. Sebelumnya, perkenalkan saya, Eva Alvelina, selaku pembawa acara dan mewakili segenap tim menghaturkan selamat datang dan bergabung di acara Seminar Human Capital Insight Seri 3 Tahun 2022 New Paradigm of Talent Management, Jakarta, Selasa 26 Juli 2022. Pandemi telah mengakselerasi perubahan dan transformasi organisasi, mulai dari transformasi digital sampai dengan perubahan cara kerja serta budaya organisasi. Kedepan, struktur organisasi dan jenjang karir yang ada saat ini akan menjadi tidak relevan lagi bagi organisasi. Oleh karena itu, organisasi perlu melakukan banyak perubahan, bukan hanya sebatas melakukan perbaikan pada proses operasional, namun juga dituntut untuk menciptakan iklim dan budaya kerja yang tidak hanya mampu menarik talent baru, tetapi juga mampu mempertahankan existing talent yang ada, sehingga organisasi mampu menjadi talent factory yang dapat berkontribusi dan berkiprah di tingkat nasional. Seminar Human Capital Insight yang diinisiasi oleh PLN Corpu ini harapannya dapat menjadi bekal bagi para pengelola human capital untuk menentukan strategi pengelolaan talent dalam menghadapi future of work yang selaras dengan langkah transformasi organisasi. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang terhormat, sebelum dimulai, mari kita berdoa terlebih dahulu agar acara berjalan dengan lancar. Izinkan saya untuk memimpin, berdoa dipersilahkan. Berdoa selesai. Dan untuk mengawali siang hari ini dengan penuh semangat, dimohon kepada Bapak dan Ibu agar dapat mengaktifkan fitur video dan audionya untuk melakukan yel-yel bersama. Saya ulangi, dimohon kepada Bapak dan Ibu agar dapat mengaktifkan fitur video dan audionya untuk melakukan yel-yel bersama. Baik, sudah siap ya? Semangat pagi! Pagi. PLN berakhlak, handal, terbaik. Terima kasih semangatnya Bapak dan Ibu. Hadirin semua, agenda selanjutnya adalah mendengarkan lagu Kebangsaan Indonesia Raya, himne dan Mars PLN. Hadirin dimohon untuk mendengarkan dengan khidmat.
majulah negeriku, majulah PLN untuk selamanya. Jayalah PLN untuk selamanya.
Bapak dan Ibu PLNers, kita saksikan video safety induction.
Selamat bergabung pada kegiatan daring kali ini. Sebelum memulai kegiatan, sesuai dengan peraturan keselamatan kerja, marilah kita perhatikan safety induction berikut dalam melakukan kegiatan daring agar terhindar dari ketidaknyamanan atau cedera selama bekerja secara daring. Mari perhatikan hal-hal sebagai berikut. Pertama, apabila kegiatan daring dilakukan bersama dalam satu ruangan, tetap jaga prokes, kenakan masker, dan saling menjaga jarak. Kedua, pastikan posisi duduk ergonomis di antaranya adalah duduk tegak tidak membungkuk, sudut siku rata dengan keyboard, leher tidak menunduk. Ketiga, atur pencahayaan dan jarak perangkat monitor Anda agar terhindar dari dampak buruk pada mata seperti radiasi dan mata lelah. Keempat, gunakan aturan 20-20-20. Setiap 20 menit menatap layar, arahkan pandangan sejauh 20 feet atau sekitar 6 meter selama 20 detik. 5. Lakukan peregangan otot di sela bekerja, terutama peregangan pada bahu, leher, dan pergelangan tangan. 6. Perhatikan penggunaan listrik perangkat-perangkat Anda. Jangan membebani stop kontak berlebihan. Perhatikan bahaya yang bersumber dari kabel charger, saklar, kabel, dan perangkat di sekitar Anda. 7. Perhatikan alarm tanda bahaya. Pastikan Anda mengetahui suara dalam bahaya di lokasi Anda. Jika terjadi kondisi bahaya, lakukan evakuasi diri menuju lokasi aman atau titik kumpul atau assembly point jika Anda di gedung perkantoran. Dan ikuti panduan tim tanggap darurat yang bertugas. 8. Hindari aktivitas berbahaya. Tidak melakukan aktivitas lainnya yang membahayakan keselamatan, seperti mengemudi saat rapat daring. 9. Terakhir, jika Anda mengalami rasa tidak nyaman atau nyeri pada sistem rangka otot tubuh usai berkegiatan secara daring, konsultasikanlah dengan dokter. Berkegiatan secara daring sudah menjadi dunia baru kita. Mari tetap perhatikan keamanan dan keselamatan agar performa kerja tetap prima. Selamat bekerja secara daring. Tidak ada yang lebih penting dari jiwa manusia.
Bapak dan Ibu PLNers, selanjutnya izinkan saya untuk menyapa telah hadir bersama kita saat ini yang terhormat General Manager PT PLN Pusdiklat, Bapak Rio Adrianto. Selamat siang, Bapak.
Selamat siang, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, rekan-rekan semuanya.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih, Bapak. Selanjutnya, saya akan menyapa kedua narasumber luar biasa kita pada hari ini. Our Honorable First Speaker, Mrs. Norlida Azmi, Chief People Officer Axiata Group Berhad. Good afternoon, Mrs. Oli.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry the picture is not coming out here. I will do something about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining this event. And our honorable second speaker, Mr. Johannes Eckold, Human Capital Management Strategy and Transformation, Director ASEAN, Oracle Singapore. Good afternoon, Mr. Jo.
Very good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon.
Thanks for joining this event. Baik.
Absolutely appreciate it.
Baik, hari ini juga saya tidak sendirian. Ke depan saya akan ditemani oleh yang kami hormati Bapak Giovany, Vice President Human Capital and Change Management PT Indonesia Power selaku moderator kita hari ini. Selamat siang Bapak Giovany.
Yes, semangat pagi.
Pagi. Semangat ya untuk hari ini ya.
Harus Mbak Eva.
Oke. Dan terakhir tentunya saya juga ingin menyapa yang kami banggakan seluruh senior leader PT PLN Persero, seluruh pengelola Human Capital, beserta seluruh PLNers yang turut menyaksikan seminar ini, baik melalui Zoom ataupun melalui streaming YouTube. Bapak dan Ibu, perlu kami informasikan juga bahwa seluruh tim yang terlibat dalam seminar hari ini telah menjalankan prosedur kesehatan dan sudah menjalankan tes web sebelum acara berlangsung. Baik, selanjutnya izinkan kami menyampaikan rules of the host seminar pada siang hari ini. Yang pertama, hadirin yang mengikuti sesi kali ini melalui Zoom, mohon untuk tetap dapat mengatur fitur audio dalam keadaan off demi kelancaran acara. Yang kedua, kepada seluruh peserta, baik via Zoom maupun streaming YouTube, dapat memberikan pertanyaan pada chat box maupun comment section di channel YouTube-nya. Yang ketiga, sehubungan dengan adanya narasumber yang menyampaikan materinya dalam bahasa Inggris, perkenankanlah kami menyampaikan panduan untuk penggunaan feature interpretation pada tampilan Zoom. Berikut cara mengaktifkannya. Bapak Ibu dapat mengklik ikon bola dunia atau 3 titik, kemudian Bapak Ibu dapat memilih bahasa Indonesia untuk mendengarkan terjemahan dalam bahasa Indonesia. Bagi Bapak Ibu yang menyaksikan acara ini melalui handphone, jika telah selesai memilih bahasa Indonesia, silahkan klik down. Seluruh pertanyaan yang Bapak Ibu drop, kemudian akan dipilih 10 pertanyaan dan akan mendapatkan hadiah. Selain itu, di setiap sesi nantinya juga akan ada kuis dan 10 pemenang yang akan mendapatkan giveaway yang sangat menarik di penghujung acara. Sepertinya semakin tidak sabar beranjak ke agenda selanjutnya, yaitu opening speech yang akan disampaikan oleh General Manager PT PLN Pusdiklat, Bapak Rio Adrianto. Dipersilahkan.
Baik, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Our honorable guest speaker, Ibu Norlida Azmi, as the Chief People Officer in Axiata Group Heart. Good afternoon. And also our second honorable guest speaker, Mr. Johannes Eckold, as the Human Capital Management Strategy and Transformation Director, ASEAN in Oracle Singapura. Good afternoon. Dan seluruh jajaran direksi PT PLN Persero, para senior leader SDM di PLN Group, dan seluruh PLNers di seluruh Indonesia yang saya banggakan. Sebelum memulai sesi pada siang yang cerah ini, saya akan memberikan sebuah pantun. Hari Selasa naik mobil listrik, ramah lingkungan dan futuristik. Kita ikuti HC Insight dengan energik untuk talent management yang terbaik. Puji syukur kehadiran Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala atas limpahan rahmat, kesehatan, sehingga kita dapat hadir bersama dalam acara Human Capital Insight yang ketiga di tahun 2022 ini dengan tema New Paradigm of Talent Management. Dalam agenda transformasi PLN, ada 3 hal yang menjadi fokus utama yang menjamin kesuksesan perubahannya. Yang pertama terkait dengan bisnis, yang kedua terkait dengan organisasi, dan yang ketiga terkait dengan budaya. Penyiapan SBM tentu menjadi kunci utama dalam menghadapi tantangan ini. Untuk itu, pengelolaan dan pengembangan SDM harus ditata dengan sebaik-baiknya. Insan PLN dituntut untuk memiliki jiwa petarung dalam menghadapi perubahan yang cepat dan masif. Hal ini tentunya selaras dengan penugasan Kementerian BUMN yang dituangkan dalam kontrak manajemen pada tahun 2022 ini, di mana salah satu indikator kinerja kunci adalah fokus kepada tenaga kerja atau sumber daya manusia. Sumber daya manusia dan sistem dalam organisasi merupakan fungsi yang strategis dalam meningkatkan nilai dan keunggulan organisasi dalam menghadapi tantangan bisnis global. Istilah talent marketplace, talent mobility, dan talent war akan menjadi bagian dari pengelolaan talent pada dunia kerja di masa yang akan datang. Ke depan, bukan lagi organisasi yang menentukan talent yang akan mereka pilih, namun kandidat talent yang akan menentukan dengan organisasi seperti apa mereka akan bekerja. Organisasi tidak hanya perlu melakukan perubahan dalam sistem internal, namun juga dituntut untuk mampu menawarkan nilai atau value yang merupakan ciri khas, sekaligus menjadi pembeda dengan organisasi lain. Dan untuk itu diperlukan dukungan dari seluruh elemen organisasi untuk dapat mewujudkan hal tersebut. Pengelolaan human capital sebagai strategic business partner tentunya memiliki peran penting dalam mempersiapkan organisasi untuk menghadapi tren baru dalam pengelolaan talent. Pengelolaan human capital tidak lagi mengadopsi best practice, namun dituntut juga untuk mampu menciptakan best fit yang paling cocok, paling tepat untuk organisasinya sendiri. Harapannya adalah organisasi mampu menciptakan iklim dan budaya kerja yang tidak hanya mampu menarik talent baru, tapi juga mampu mempertahankan existing talent, sehingga organisasi menjadi talent factory yang dapat berkontribusi dan berkiprah di tingkat nasional maupun juga internasional. Hal tersebut tentunya selaras dengan Human Capital Experience System yang telah dicanangkan oleh PLN dengan 4 pilarnya, yaitu right size, right skill, right spend, dan right system. Integrated Talent Management di PLN memberikan kesempatan kepada semua pegawai untuk bertumbuh dan berkembang. Dengan jumlah pegawai milenial sebanyak 66%, talent management akan secara inklusif mendorong pemimpin-pemimpin muda untuk berkarya sampai dengan manajemen puncak di PLN dalam waktu dekat ini. Sebagai penutup, workshop ini diharapkan akan menjadi salah satu modal bagi para pengelola human capital dalam menentukan strategi untuk mengelola talent yang mampu mendukung transformasi organisasi, serta mampu mewujudkan visi perusahaan untuk menjadi perusahaan listrik terkemuka se-Asia Tenggara, dan nomor 1 pilihan pelanggan untuk solusi energi. Sebelum masuk ke acara inti, perkenankanlah saya menutup kembali acara atau opening pada kesempatan ini dengan sebuah pantun. Jalan-jalan ke Makassar, pulangnya singgah ke Raja Ampat. Saya ucapkan selamat belajar, semoga webinar ini membawa manfaat. Demikian yang dapat saya sampaikan, semoga webinar hari ini dapat menjadi media knowledge sharing yang mampu menambah wawasan, mengelaborasi ide inovatif, serta membuka sudut pandang baru bagi seluruh insan PLN. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Luar biasa sekali pantunnya Pak Rio. Terima kasih Pak Rio Adrianto atas opening speech-nya yang sungguh menginspirasi kita semua di sini. Untuk agenda selanjutnya, dimohon kepada hadirin untuk mengaktifkan feature videonya karena kita akan melakukan sesi foto bersama. Saya ulangi, dimohon kepada hadirin untuk mengaktifkan feature videonya karena kita akan melakukan sesi foto bersama. Baik, sudah siap? Mohon tampilkan pose PLN terbaiknya dan senyum termanisnya. Siap ya? Saya akan hitung mundur dari 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Baik, terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu PLN-ers. Bapak dan Ibu PLN-ers yang kami hormati, selanjutnya izinkan saya membacakan terlebih dahulu profil highlight dari Bapak Giovany. Bapak Giovany merupakan lulusan S1 Teknik Industri Institut Teknologi Nasional Bandung. Dalam perjalanan karirnya, Bapak Giovany pernah menjabat sebagai Manajer Perencanaan Kebijakan HCMS pada Divisi HCMS Direktorat HCM PLN Kantor Pusat tahun 2016 sampai dengan 2021. Dan yang terakhir sebagai Vice President Human Capital and Change Management PT Indonesia Power tahun 2021 sampai sekarang. Baik, tanpa mengulur waktu lagi, kita masuk pada sesi inti yang akan dipandu oleh moderator. Silakan Pak Giovany.
Ya, terima kasih Mbak Eva.
Time is yours, Pak.
Oke. Setiap adegan harus dijalani. Jangan exit, teruslah berlaga. Perkenalkan, saya Giovany, moderator HC Insight Series 3. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, dan salam kebajikan. Yang terhormat para senior leader PT PLN Persero, para direktur anak perusahaan PT PLN Persero, dan rekan-rekan PLNers yang telah hadir di ruang virtual Human Capital Insight Series 3 tahun 2022 dengan tema New Paradigm of Talent Management. Merupakan sebuah kehormatan bagi saya untuk diamanahkan sebagai moderator pada acara Human Capital Insight Series 3 ini. Dan this event organized by PLN Corporate University. Sebelum penyajian materi, saya akan menyampaikan sedikit pengantar terkait dengan materi yang akan disampaikan oleh narasumber. Dalam menghadapi future of work, organisasi perlu menyusun strategi dalam mengelola talent. Tentunya tidak hanya sebatas strategi untuk menarik talent baru, tapi strategi untuk mempertahankan atau retaining existing talent yang ada. Sehingga organisasi mampu menjadi talent factory yang dapat berkontribusi dan berkiprah di tingkat nasional. Dalam menjalankan strategi tersebut, tentunya bukan hanya leader yang menjadi sosok penanggung jawab, namun dapat juga peran dari pengelola human capital dalam menentukan strategi pengelolaan talent melalui pengembangan mindset, pengembangan skill, dan budaya kerja yang selaras dengan langkah transformasi PLN. Para senior leaders dan PLNers, pada kesempatan ini kita akan mengikuti 2 sesi paparan terkait tema kita hari ini, yaitu New Paradigm of Talent Management. Sesi pertama akan disampaikan oleh Mrs. Norlida Azmi. Beliau adalah Chief People Officer Axiata Group Berhad. Adapun sesi kedua, kita akan menyimak paparan menarik dari Mr. Johannes Eckold. Beliau adalah Human Capital Management Strategy and Transformation Director for Oracle ASEAN. Baik, sehubungan dengan waktu yang terbatas, setiap sesi akan terdiri dari sesi presentasi atau pemaparan dari pembicara dan kemudian dilanjutkan dengan sesi tanya jawab. Dan sepanjang paparan dari pembicara, senior leaders dan PLNers dapat menyampaikan pertanyaan melalui link Google Form yang ada di chat box. Jangan lupa untuk mencantumkan nama dan unit asal, karena akan ada hadiah untuk pertanyaan terpilih. Dan pertanyaan-pertanyaan tersebut akan saya bacakan pada sesi tanya jawab. Baik, kita mulai untuk masuk ke sesi pertama. Saat ini telah hadir di tengah-tengah kita Mrs. Norlida Azmi.
Assalamualaikum.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mrs. Oli. You look so happy and cheerful as always.
Of course, excited to be part of your event.
Okay, let me introduce you first to the audiences. Thank you, Mr. Rolly. Nice to meet you. Beliau adalah Chief People Officer Axiata Group Berhad. Dan baik, saya izin untuk membacakan CV dari Mrs. Oli. Mrs. Norlida Azmi, Chief People Officer Axiata Group Berhad. Beliau memiliki background pendidikan S2 di bidang Business Administration International Finance dari Northern Illinois University, USA. Beliau memiliki pengalaman yang luar biasa dan telah berkecimpung di bidang HR selama lebih dari 10 tahun. Pengalaman terakhir beliau adalah menjabat sebagai Chief People Officer pada Axiata, Malaysia. Sebelumnya, beliau memiliki pengalaman di bidang HR pada Permodalan Nasional Berhad, Malaysia, dan HSBC Malaysia. Beliau juga memiliki sertifikasi sebagai Associated Certified Coach dan HR Business Partner dari Jos Bersin Academy. Next, your presentation will be delivered in 45 minutes maximum, and I will help to remind you for the last 5 minutes. We will display your presentation slides, and please say next if you want to change the slide in screen. Without any further ado, so please welcome Mrs. Oli. Time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Gio. I wish I had a beautiful pantone like Pak Rio earlier, and it would certainly open the way differently. But again, I would like to say good afternoon to all the senior leaders of PLN and all the PLNers. It is my absolute delight and pleasure to be here. And above all, such an interesting topic. Talent management, in my opinion, if you can put my front slide, I believe has been evolving even before the pandemic and the lockdown. But what the pandemic and the lockdown has done has really accelerated the shift such that it has completely changed the way we look at it and the way we apply it. But Joe, if you can put my first slide, please. So the new paradigm is really forcing us to think, how do we overlay, like just now Pak Ari was saying, how do we overlay the business challenges into our organizational people while surrounded by the macroeconomic factors? In the next slide, sometimes people say the word future of work is no longer applicable because the future of work is now. As I mentioned earlier, it was already morphing to be something different. It's very different because the world has changed, but more importantly, the demands and expectations of the talents inside the organization has changed tremendously. And as we recover from the pandemic and the lockdown, different organizations are having different strategies on how they bring people to the workplace, whether hybrid, whether 100%. But I think what's also challenging and impacting our business and therefore our people are the additional macro complexities. And you will hear how often, and I'm sure for you no different, is that how do we deal with our business in terms of the rising inflation, the rising interest rate, the instability of socio-political and the disruption of food supply and logistics. All this impact how our people are reacting. So what has happened is the people managers, and I say people managers is, I always think that people managers are beyond the HR organization. And it's not because I want to, pass the buck to somebody else, but managing talent today requires a wider internal ecosystem. So I see the people managers of our whole organization being shared across the organizations. Firstly, also, leaders today are not just defined by the organizational chart. Leaders today are also defined by people who exert influence. They make a difference onto the people that are in the organization. In our organization, post the, the great return, you are confounded by the great resignation, the great reshuffle. The expectations of our people are also different. Our talents want job fulfillment. They want a holistic well-being. And they also want to know organizations are connected with the communities and the ecosystem that matters today. I heard that the PLNers today are 60% millennials, and therefore these expectations are very, very pronounced. So therefore, when we come and understand that these are external shifts and internal shifts, the management of talent, and I want to say that talent management to me begins from talent acquisition. Just now, Pak Gio talked about, we want to attract as well as retain. But also Pak Rio talked about nowadays, people choose which organizations they want, not that we just choose the talent. So I call this the two-way attraction. And sometimes it can be a fatal attraction. So you need to get what is right. So today, what I want to share with you within these 30-40 minutes, I'd be happier to answer more questions and just hear me talk, is a little bit of the trends, some applications that we have done in Axiata, and really at the end of it is, what was the strategy that was driving it? You may ask is, why don't we start with strategy? For me, sometimes you have to understand what are the business imperatives and the people needs before we can come to the strategy. As Dave Urich said, HR is not about HR. HR is about making the business successful. If you can go to the next slide, please. I've articulated a little bit of all these factors, and what has really come about is the ability of organizations who are able to adapt quickly and not go into too much what I call analysis paralysis and experiment. Do it quickly, because I'm not sure that our talents will wait for us to be perfect before you can want to roll out something. So how do we build a motivated workforce? We talk about engagement, but engagement alone is no longer adequate. During the within the pandemic, unless you were managing engagement as well as productivity in terms of well-being, they tend to have an inverse relationship. So we need to understand how much can we push productivity now that we have come back to work. But ultimately, what I find one of the biggest people practices that we are using as we come back to work to drive productivity is the organization design principle. How do we achieve the right organizational structure, the right size, so that the people have the right skills at the right time? And I can hear my CFO say, Ollie, we must have the right cost too. But I think cost is a byproduct. If you get the right people that you can drive your productivity and drive the business, sustainable business, then it's very key. At this juncture, I just want to explain a little bit about Axiata, because as I go through, I'm going to be sharing a little bit of the things that we have pivoted in Axiata and why. So we're a little bit about maybe 12,500 people spread across 11 countries, and most of them are frontier or emerging economies. So it has different challenges in terms of skill sets, in terms of the labor environment, all those factors come in. We've segmented what we call the triple core strategy. First of all is our telcos, which have moved to become digital telcos. Otherwise, we are going to be left behind. The second pillar is about data and analytics, companies that we hope will become unicorns where innovation is key. And thirdly is about infrastructure. And this is where, the hard side of things. So you can imagine the talent management that we would need to have must take into account the different business skills required, the different markets movements, and also what are the factors driving the business in the country. We have to work in partnership. I've just come out from a business strategy session at Axiata, and the references, the times that I've heard, do we have the people for this? Do our people have the right skills? I'm like, oh my God, there's so much to do. But having said that, this is one of the most exciting times for people in the human capital function, as well as for all of us who are managing people, because we have the ability to influence and impact our people as well as the business. So if you can go to the next slide, please. This is a little bit, you can go into many research and you'll find a compilation. What are the new trends and what are the impact? I don't think any discussion today can go without us talking about hybrid work. And the debate still continues. I feel that you can't debate this too much. You have to experiment and you have to try and see what suits for your organization. At Axiata Group at Corporate Center, we have a fully hybrid work, which we call Flex at Axiata, which is really about you can flex time, flex space, flex dress. You know, you can call anything flex, right? You can even have compressed work hours. What is key here, you're addressing the needs of our people who wants to feel empowered that they can make a decision when they come to work. Of course, they're more radical, flexible with it. You know, some organization, if you read Gartner, that says, oh, there can be, people can choose what they want to do. I'm not sure most organizations are there yet, so we have to take this in bite sizes. You always hear about, oh my God, we don't have enough talents in the right space. Or you hear about countries having high unemployability. Why is there a talent gap and why is unemployability going up? The skills that is required under the pivoted world is not matching. So what we are finding is there's a huge acceleration to build capability, to build competencies, and therefore expand capacity. And I think related to here, which may not be here, is about, do we ensure that the processes that we're doing also get simplified and where possible and where it can be, can it get digitized or digitalized so that our human resource, our people can move to more value-added roles. It's a big transformation, and for us, we are having a huge digital transformation. The role of the HR practitioners today goes from advocate, consultant, and George Bursin says that, you know, the HR as a professional is as a service organization. The skill sets required of us in the human capital functions has really changed. We must have as much tech savviness as we do EQ savviness, above all, understanding the business context. And as the demands from our people increases, the nuances, the voices, and the mood, you must know it yesterday. You must anticipate it tomorrow. So you must have a very proactive role. And I could not understate that informal learning in organizations is above all bigger than even what the training department can give you. And this is a little bit of the challenges when we have hybrid work. How do you create those instances when our people can learn from each other? Because it's not always easy if everybody's working remote, because you always go into a meeting with a transactional mindset. And this is a challenge that we have in the new ways of working. Micro-learning is also very important for us, micro-credentials. It's great that we have a great degree from from a great university, but we are finding in Axiata that nano degrees matter much more. Nano degrees where we curate on the skill sets that we require for the business that we do, and then give people little badges along the way, because you learn at the pace that you want, bite size. Who doesn't love Netflix, right? Because you create, you curate what you want to learn, what you want to be. So talent management, I think learning has gone a lot more into the next split sort of a choice. Talent management is also, you can't do a career management that says after 5 years you'll be a manager. Perhaps our millennials and our Zender says, no, I want something else. So I think this is where talent management is a bit challenged to say, how do we make this into the experience that people can say they have a voice in what they want to do, because you choose what you want to see in Netflix. You're not forced to, at least most of us are not. So that's about the first page of some of the trends, and the next page is a few more trends I wanted to share with you. Next page, please. I like this term, people cloud, right? We always talk about cloud where everybody is much more technical. It talks about people cloud is because there's a lot of knowledge that's floating amongst the people, the tacit knowledge, the institutional knowledge. And in an organization where we have multi-generational, how do we get some of those institutional knowledge from perhaps those who are more seniors, right? Work on demand. Increasingly across our group, we're going into the gig type of workers. In Asia, in some part of Asia, and perhaps even in Malaysia, some organizations still have this if you're a gig worker, is a contract worker, and perhaps it doesn't have the same stature. I think we need to move away from it. We also need to understand that the benefits that you would provide to a gig worker should not be second class, because what measures now, if you talk about skill-based talent management, is that how do you deliver the objectives? And there's many ways that you can go about. And number 8, when you talk about goodbye native boomer, I'm a boomer, hello new leadership, is trying to say that the new world, people want an inclusive environment. The younger generation would not tolerate biases. And this is just saying that you need to have a very strong DEI. I'll speak about it a little more. And the other one with pilot projects to a digital strategy, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You cannot perfect a concept. You need to have the ability to go to market very quickly. And that's where you need to understand the business needs. I think one of the critical skill sets that you have to have today is the ability to connect the dots very quickly, because then you can go to market, and those in the human capital function can provide advisory services to your board of directors, to your board of management, on how can we quickly pivot. Sometimes you are successful, sometimes you might make a mistake, perhaps fail first, learn fast, and perhaps get some forgiveness in advance from your top management. In the next slide, there are many ways that you can talk about all the trends, and there are other trends that can come into it. But what is it that you want to look from the paradigm is, like I said originally, is that you really want to get that motivated workforce. We are finding, even in Malaysia, in some parts of the markets that we operate, where we are so strict about a flexible work model, it is contributing to attrition. A number 20 is an aggregate numbers, different reports give different, and it will vary by country, by region, and of course by company. A lot of it is, there's a lot of a community thinking these days. It's not that the single person is no longer important, because hyper-personalization is very important to the employee today. However, things must be holistic. You must think about it from a group as well. So the ability to understand what is hyper-personalization for an individual and for their team, for their group, is very, very key. And the expectation has evolved beyond pay. Don't get me wrong, I still think people want to be paid fairly. And sometimes there's a fair amount of wage suppression in Asia, but that's a bigger thing to handle. Benefits needs to move with time. We adopt in Axiata flexible benefits, and we've just changed or included new things. For example, they want to get some benefits if I don't use to go to the doctor, to be able to go for my gym. We've also included alternative medications, Chinese medications, acupuncture, because this is the new way of living. People want things that are more natural and organic. Power skills is very key. As much as Axiata, our vision is to be the next generation of digital. However, there is a mixture or a balance between the right brain and the left brain. There must be a human element that bridges what we do technologically and how we interact with our human in the organizations. And so there is also an increasing number of people who want to be independent operators or have side hustles, and corporations must be prepared in redesigning the work processes and the structures and the capability of the people. In the next slide, please, I want to speak a little bit more about hybrid work model, because there's just so much literature and debate that goes. So in one of our organizations here in Malaysia, not within Axiata Group, they are slowly increasing from minimum coming back to office 2 days, 3 days, and 4 days. Because if you think about it, for some of this organization, the roles have not been as well defined. The interactiveness is still there. I cannot lie in judgment and say that, oh, that's wrong for them not to have a hybrid workforce. However, I think if they suffer attrition, then they may have to relook what this is. You may want to go into compressed work week. You would have seen some increasing literature that says, oh, the 40 hours work week is dead. Maybe it's 4 days. I'm not sure Asia is ready for this yet, but you can see a lot of the countries are moving to that. again, we're talking about, how hybrid Gartner estimated between 70%. And then you see another article that says everybody will go back to 100% in the office. I think the debate goes on. My philosophy is you do what is right for you. Our E.co, which is our tower company, have most of the people coming back because that's the nature of the business. When you're the business at the edge delivering for customers, I think you need to be there. What you may want to do is balance it. Does it have to be all 8 hours in the office? I mean, in Malaysia, 8 hours is the legally required time to be in the office. And what it's saying here is employee centricity is very, very key. And most organizations are actually reviewing their employee value proposition. The EVP, I think, has to be relooked. Otherwise, it's going to look a bit stale. Next slide, please. This one in Axiata is very important. Across our organization, so in Axiata, we have a framework for the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has 4 pillars. The first pillar is gender balance. The second pillar is generations. The third pillar is ethnicities. And the fourth pillar is abilities. It is underlined by capabilities. The reason we put it out there is increasingly when I interview people, they says, Ollie, what's Axiata's philosophy on DEI? What's your philosophy on sustainability? So under the ESG, this is a very important facet. I want to explore a little bit and explain about the second pillar first, which is about generations, because I'm very fascinated that you're 60% millennials. So for me, I feel that we have almost like definitely 4 generations in the workplace, right? The Zenders, the millennials, the Gen Xers, the boomers, and our board of commissioners would tend to be, even older. So there's about 5 generations. How do we maximize and leverage it? In one of our programs that we have to share with you, it's called Axiata Generational Exchange. People talk about mentoring and reverse mentoring. The way that we do our HX is either a pot of 3 or 4 people. And the idea is that they form micro-social interactions. They will work on a specific project such as culture, because culture is increasingly so important to any organization. And thirdly, they will do a CSR, because that is where I was telling you about sustainability. So that's one of our addressing the generational engagement. But when it comes also to gender, we are 68% male and 32% women. In this highly technical field, we're finding that we don't have enough women in the engineering functions. We have a lot of women in the corporate functions. So the idea is, how do we build capability? It's not so much that you want to be a sexist or a feminist, but we want to ensure that Axiata and this group of people have access to a wider pool of talents, and people advance or get included based on merit. So last year we joined 30% Club. We want to ensure that women are able to go into board directorships. We also sign up for the United Nations Women Empowerment Principles, because that one forces you to look at your policies, forces you to look at your implementation. And the third one, it's not just internal. It asks you to look at the value chain in the organizations. You ask your supplier of your marketing collateral, what's their philosophy on DEI? So whenever I'm doing the new revamp of our people EVP, I was like saying, okay, I know that I'm predominantly millennials, but I have no collateral that's reflecting that it's multi-generational. Or I'm like saying it's all men or it's all women. Those are subtle messages that DEI addresses. And if there's anything for me that's important, is the word equity. Equity means that we're giving access to enough people. So DEI is very key for us in the organization. I'm proud to say that at every board meeting, when we look at any of our reports and our practices, there is always a conversation, how diversified is your workforce? So it has taken up to board and at various levels. In the next slide is really about a little bit more of whether people are actually putting their money where their mouth is. Are they taking actions? I don't want to be involved in an initiative that just do whitewashing. You just do it because it looks good and you want to look good in your sustainability report. So those are some of the steps that you can go if you want to pick it up. And I'm proud to say that our company within Axiata Group Excel, Giovany, is a very formidable figure, not only as a woman leader in the organization, but from my understanding, the country. So I take great pride in the way that this has been happening. In the next slide, I'm watching my time, Pak Jo, so that this is something I want to go for. Power skills are so important, particularly as there's so much emphasis about digital. Where is the heart, they're saying. And therefore, why are power skills are becoming so important? And if you go about it, what are power skills, right? So we talk about power skills having the ability to have analytical thinking and innovation, creativity, complex problem solving, and as well as leadership and social influence. There's so many power skills. I think where HR can play a role is perhaps focusing on some of those that matters to you as an organization. In Axiata, we have what we call our people quality framework, which our first filter is called culture fit. Our culture is defined by two simple values: uncompromising integrity and exceptional performance. So they have to pass that filter first. And secondly, then we go into the various skill sets. And this year, I'm proud to say, we change from leadership to leading. Because like I said, today, leadership is not just about who sits in the hierarchy, but who can influence and be the change makers. The other one that we have included, apart from job-specific skills, is sustainability. And sustainability touching ESG and DEI. These are early inclusions, but these are power skills we want to build within the DNA of our Axiata and its group of companies, because we talk about why are these important. And this is a little bit of representation because it brings about preservation, right? Preservation of the role where robots and automation, and people get sometimes worried that I'm going to be challenged or out of a job. It also is to drive the performance. How do we engage the talent? It's not enough these days to do an employee engagement survey once a year and then take an action. You always have to feel the voice and the mood all the time. One of the biggest assets that I think people, power skills that we must have is communication, written communication, verbal communication, and increasingly when we are engaging with people on hybrid form, how do we become effective digitally? Do you have the digital presence? Are you able to convince people? So there's a fair amount of training happening, and ultimately is the workplace environment. So power skills are very, very key. And above all, we're always driven by what the customers want. We exist for a certain purpose. Next slide, please. This is a very interesting topic. For us in Axiata, reskilling and upskilling is happening so rampantly. We have in Axiata what we call a virtual university called the Axiata Fast Forward. We have 7 academies, and we partners with various learning organizations such as, of course, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Coursera, but we also partner with Microsoft and any other, some of our vendors that will give us certification. In doing this, we have been forced to also identify the competencies that we require. So there's a huge taxonomy. So let's take about, what's a key role for us in Axiata today is data analyst. So what are the skill sets required to be a chief data analyst, and what's the progression? So that's really key for us to be, so that, what about reskilling involves learning new skills. So one of the things that we have rolled out is what we call the data citizen, of which we hope all of Axiata will participate, because for me, the vision is when you see an Axiata employee or a member of the staff, you say, wow, their digital and their analytical muscle and quotient is very high. And that's key because it future-proofs them. It also allows us to build an agile organization, because we have a project and we say, okay, we need these skill sets. So we're also right now going into building a little bit of a platform where if I put the skill sets, my people across the organizations, we're able to say, okay, for this project, I can beg, borrow, or steal from the internal organizations. And of course, if I don't, then I have to buy it in the market. We feel that reskilling and upskilling is going to be a competitive advantage. So the Axiata Fast Forward, I was explaining to you, the 7 academies. The one that we launched during the lockdown was our digital, and I'm very proud about it. The second one is on our enterprise. There are our ways of working, which covers governance and risk management. We have our business and finance, and we are about to put 3 more on the road. But all of this comes with design thinking and really saying, how do we match the required competencies to the jobs that we're going forward? So in the next slide, I think I'm going through as fast as I can, ultimately moving to skills-based talent management. Over the next 2 days, I'm so excited, or at least I'm excited, but my people are a bit stretched. The fact that we are having our group talent council, where all the CEOs and the CHROs of each of our operating companies are coming, putting up the top talent, putting up our critical talents in succession management, so that we give visibility, so that we can identify opportunities. So therefore, this skills-based management, talent management, is really about building a taxonomy, and then we're able to do an assessment. We can use it on the recruitment, and above all is to craft our intervention. The next slide, please. So skills-based learning and performance will give, if we look at it, we have to look at 2 sides, yeah? From the organization's lens as well as our people lens. It will give them increased mobility, and our people want jobs fulfillment. There will also be the ability for us to give timely recognition, and like I mentioned before, perhaps adding a more future-proofing for their careers. For us, from an organizational thing, we want to build that right size and everything else, all the 4 R's, is it will give me the ability to have organizational agility. It goes about for engagement because it touches on their fulfillment, and it brings an alignment to our goal. And it's a win-win situation for both the organization and our people. So I do think that we do have to go very quickly. You know, Josh Bersin said, the best learning is done by the flow of work. And we're trying to make this into small bite sizes. When people feel like learning, they want to learn either on the system, amongst their friends. You've got to create an environment that comes about. The next slide, please. So this is where we have come to, you know, for in Axiata, we have a people strategy that is called, our aim is to sustain an inclusive and winning culture through high organizational effectiveness, nurturing people capabilities, and maximizing potential in becoming a digital champion and positively impacting our communities. This is very key for us. And my 5 pillars in the people space is amplify our winning culture, build organizational effectiveness, cultivate learning organization, drive talent management, and embed digital HR and analytics. To my team, I always say, all right, people, how are we doing in our ABCDE? Amplify, build, develop, cultivate, drive, and embed. So the expectations from the people side and our employees is very high. I think that's my last slide, is it? Jill? Next slide. Oh, sorry, this is my last slide. You know, we're going through this huge transformation, and I've been through many organizations, and they say, oh, change management can just happen on the side or somebody. It's not. I think when you're undertaking a big transformation like that, you must have at least the mental ability to understand the various stages of change management, the goal, the milestones, the tracking of it, the communication, and the measurement. This is very key for me when we undertake change management. And the paradigm shift in talent management, which is actually all encompassing across our people life cycle, compels me to put in place a far more active change management. So this is one of the things that I would encourage organizations are really going to change how our people feel. It's going to be quite interesting. So therefore, we have a culture framework. I was telling you about our UIEP, uncompromising integrity and exceptional performance, driven by our value manifestation of MAD, just go MAD, modern, agile, and digital, because that impacts your talent brand in the market. And therefore, that talent brand is an attraction because people want to join you, but it's also retention because people take pride in belonging to the organizations that we want to represent. Increasingly, as the workforce looks for purpose, This is how we can define our value proposition to our staff in attraction and retention. We hope to continue to be a talent factory in generating our digital champions going forward. And with that, that's my last. There's another slide. Please, Pak Gio, the last closing slide. I think that's it. It's just thank you so much for listening to me. I am available on LinkedIn and IG. I share my stories in hoping that I can inspire some people. And sometimes when we have a conversation on these platforms, I also learn. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take some questions, and I hope I can do justice against what PLN is expecting. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Oli. Very inspiring presentation. Kita berikan tepuk tangan yang meriah buat Mrs. Oli. Alright, now we will move to the question and answer session. Kita lanjut ke sesi diskusi dan tanya jawab. Senior leaders dan PLNers, kesempatan pertama kita persilahkan kepada Bapak Ibu senior leaders apabila ada pertanyaan terkait dengan topik yang telah disampaikan oleh Mrs. Oli tadi, dipersilahkan untuk bertanya langsung kepada narasumber kita. Silakan. Ya, monggo Pak Wisnu, sepertinya apakah akan bertanya? Atau Pak Rio, barangkali ada pertanyaan terkait dengan topik yang telah disampaikan oleh Mrs. Oli pertama ini. Oke, sepertinya masih ini ya, masih mungkin ada double atau seperti apa. Kita masuk ke pertanyaan dari saya. Next question is from me. Mrs. Oli, I use my privilege as a moderator. Okay, the question is, you have described related to the situation with new trend in talent management, about a trend in talent management that should be a consideration in our strategy. Can you explain what is the urgency? What will happen if we don't do that? Or too late to implement it? What is the North Star or ultimate goals about the new paradigm of talent management? Okay, Mrs. Oli, you can answer the question.
But Joe, you want to give me difficult questions, is it? No, I'm just kidding. It's a very good question. You know, it's people say, why do I need to do it now? We have found that if we don't do it now, we will lose our talent to the market. That's one. The other one is if we don't implement against one or several of these new trends, we are not going to give our people that capabilities that will design solutions for our customers. And therefore, this will impact business results. So it's going to be adverse on us on business front as well as our people front. So I believe that it's not too late. You know, I always say to people that the pandemic and the lockdown has given us a more equal opportunity, such that it almost like equalized most of the players. So we have the opportunity to now come in and leapfrog, and that's what we are trying to do as well, to perhaps turn any adversity or challenges into an opportunity. So what is the North Star of the talent management? For me, it's actually to ensure that the fulfillment of our people such that they will stay or be attracted to join us and drive and be part of meeting our organizational goals. That to me is how critical an adoption of the pivoted talent management is. And the other thing about Joe is that you may come into the game late, but if you have the capability, you and your team have the capability, you will accelerate and take over anybody else who perhaps is like I said, analysis paralysis, or ask too much of ROI, or you want a perfect solution. So I think it's never too late to do something for our changing workforce.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Mrs. Oli. Baik, Bapak, Ibu, dan PLNers, sudah terdapat beberapa pertanyaan yang masuk di Google Form. Sambil menjaga ketersediaan waktu, saya akan berikan kesempatan untuk penanya terpilih. Ya, pertanyaan pertama dari audiens di sini dari Bapak Muhammad Firdaus yang berasal dari divisi HSC Bidang Pelayanan HC Regional Sumatera Kalimantan. Pertanyaannya adalah bagaimana Axiata Group menentukan kandidat talent dalam sistem pengelolaan talenta. The question is, how does Axiata determine talents candidate? Is there a system built to manage them? Okay, Mrs. Oli.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we have in our talent management framework. If we talk about talent that goes into a talent program, we do have a criteria. Firstly is that we do look at the profiling of the person, the achievement that he has had, the inputs that we have across a 360, and the fit to role to our people quality framework. If you remember, I was saying to you, past the culture fit, I have the leading competencies, the job specific, and the other one is also what we call a wider set of skill sets, your digital acumen. And then you will be put into the right talent programs. In fact, as we speak, like yesterday, we launched our program for data and for analytics for our leaders with IMD. Afterwards, after I leave this, we're going to launch our Harvard Next Generation Leaders. So the assessment is very key, and then we plug it into our succession management. What is the likely targeted role they're going to go for? Then we will supplement this wider programs, which are much more targeted learning. Like, should we send you to one of those data scientist program, advanced or intermediate? So it's quite a complex IDP that we have past the identification. Having said that, we are now going into building what we call the technical track. So people who have no aspirations to be CEO, all they want to be is the nerd and geeks. I want to be a software engineer, and I don't want to do too many KPIs and performance management reports. I want to do much more technical role. So we're building our technical track right now, and that assessment is very similar. We will do an assessment of the capability and the aspirations, but more importantly, on the potential.
Okay, Ms. Oli, very clear. Thank you for the answer. We go to the next question from Rizky Muhammad. Is from Regional Sulmapana. The question is, since talent management is a dynamic process, how do we ensure that the right people are prepared for the right position? Okay.
For me, I find thank you for the question. I find the right people, because it's dynamic, there are times somebody no longer belongs to that talent program. And that's when you have the difficult conversations. However, in our talent management program, at minimum across the group, we'll have to have a touch point at least once a quarter. So we have graduates from the program. Sometimes they have, and then there are others that may have to be dropped. But generally, where the problems happen is at that time, they're having a difficulty either in their job or in their family life. So we do give a concession. But above all, somebody is dropped from the talent program when they sort of fail the culture fit, particularly if you have breached what we call our uncompromising integrity standards.
Thank you for the answer, Ms. Oli. we go to the last question for Mrs. Oli. The question is from Mutia Loreta. It's from UID Jaya. The question is how Axiata Group implement hybrid working for the employee while the system reliability still become one of company's priority for customer satisfaction.
Thank you for the question. I guess I have to explain that Axiata Group, we're a corporate center, so we're not direct to the system's reliability. So let me just put it that for our companies, our operating companies that are touching the customers, hybrid working is very difficult. So I think that is where you have to be on site. What they have to have is a flexible working in terms of alternating days, but they cannot work from home. It's just impossible for perhaps even our tower operators. They have to climb up the towers when there's a problem to ensure that there is a connectivity. For our mobile providers, they have to go to our clients. It's the other jobs that we have to give. So for those people that we cannot avail hybrid working, we have to think, what other flexibility can we give to these people? And that's always a challenge, because we have to identify the roles that can enjoy the hybrid working. That I cannot gloss over, that everybody gets it.
Thank you for the answer, Mrs. Oli. Untuk merefresh suasana, mari kita ikuti kuis dahulu dengan menjawab pertanyaan melalui chat. Pertanyaannya adalah, power skill merupakan komponen penting yang mampu mendukung pegawai menghadapi perubahan. Berikut ini yang merupakan power skill adalah A. Preservation, B. Performance, C. Communication, atau D. Semua benar. Silakan ditulis pada kolom chat. Kami berikan kesempatan kurang lebih 20 detik dan pemenang kuis akan mendapatkan hadiah menarik dari PLN Corporate University. Senior leaders dan PLNers, dari diskusi kita kali ini dapat saya simpulkan dari paparan Axiata Group Berhad bersama Mrs. Oli tadi, yaitu Axiata Group Berhad melakukan pendekatan secara holistik atau holistic approach dalam menghadapi paradigma baru talent management. Di antaranya melalui implementasi yang pertama adalah hybrid work model, yaitu pola bekerja yang fleksibel dengan fokus terhadap employee well-being. Dan yang kedua, diversity, equity, inclusion, pengembangan DEI leaders untuk mendukung perubahan budaya kerja. Dan yang terakhir, power skill, yaitu pengembangan talent melalui reskilling, upskilling, dan skill-based talent management. Baiklah, Bapak Ibu senior leaders dan PLNers, selesai sudah pemaparan materi dan tanya jawab di sesi pertama. Kita berikan apresiasi tepuk tangan kepada Miss Oli yang telah sharing di sesi pertama ini. Thank you, Mrs. Oli. I really appreciate for your presence and your sharing in this event. Wishing you more success in the years to come.
And to the PLNers too. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Senior leaders dan PLNers, kita masuk ke pemaparan di sesi kedua. Saat ini telah hadir di tengah-tengah kita Mr. Johannes Eckold. Good afternoon, Mr. Joe. Good afternoon,
Very good
Mr. Joe.
afternoon. Hello, Pak Jo. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How is it going in Singapore now?
Oh, it's going
Still
very
high
well.
temperature?
Today is today is a bit rainy, so I'm happy to be inside and glad to be with all of you, to be honest.
Okay, I hope you are always healthy in this situation.
Absolutely.
Let me introduce you first to the audiences. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Beliau adalah Human Capital Management, Strategi dan Transformation Director ASEAN, Oracle, Singapura. Bapak, Ibu, dan PLNers, sebelum kita menyimak pemaparan yang menarik dari Mr. Joe, perkenankan saya untuk membacakan CV dari beliau. Johannes Eckold, Human Capital Management Strategi and Transformation Director ASEAN Oracle, Singapura. Beliau memiliki background pendidikan di bidang Business Administration dari University of Gothenburg, Jerman. Sebelumnya, beliau menjabat sebagai Founder and Managing Consultant pada Up Advisory di tahun 2019 dan Director of M&A Research Asia pada ORC International di tahun 2017. Beliau juga memiliki pengalaman yang luar biasa sebagai senior konsultan for HR, Employee Engagement, Data and Software Solution pada Willis Tower Watson, Singapura, dan Hong Kong. Next, your presentation will be delivered in 45 minutes maximum, and I will help to remind you for the last 5 minutes. So please, Mr. Joe, we will display your presentation slide, and please say next if you want to change the slide in screen. Without any further ado, time is yours, Mr. Joe.
Joe, thank you very much. Let's just bring up the first slide. And again, thank you to the whole PLN leadership and the audience for having me here today. It's really an absolute pleasure and honor on my side. So I was listening with a lot of interest right now to Ms. Norlida or Ms. Ollie's presentation, and clearly there's a lot of things that she talked about that I also wanted to talk about. So it leaves me in a little bit of a difficult situation, but the good thing is that obviously we have the same understanding of the trends that are happening in talent management and in human capital. But the tricky situation is right now, I don't want to bore you. I don't want to tell you a lot of these things again. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to go through the trends a bit quickly, maybe keep it a bit light, and also talk a bit about, what Oracle is doing to help organizations in those situations. Next slide, please. So the agenda that I have prepared for you today is I'm going to talk about the new paradigm for talent management. Then I'm going to talk about 4 different imperatives that we believe are really, really critical for HR practitioners to follow. And then I'm going to talk briefly about how Oracle and Oracle's technology can help in that situation. Next slide, please. So we talked about this before, and Ms. Ollie alluded to it as well in terms of the global trends that are really setting the stage for talent management these days. So if you're looking at the macroeconomic trends, there's obviously fears of recession. There's inflation looming in most economies across the globe. Supply chain interruptions are happening. There's the conflict where I come from Europe, between Russia and the Ukraine, and many countries being involved into that, and therefore a lot of economic uncertainties evolving from that. And we still sometimes forget about it, but the global pandemic is still raging and giving us a lot of difficult situations and economic situations that we need to deal with as organizations. And that, if we go to the next slide, then results in the talent management predicaments that we are finding ourselves in. Ms. Ollie before talked about the great resignation, basically the reshuffling of the organizations, but also employees are still struggling with mental health issues. So there was talking before about wellness and flexibility in Axiata, and I'm also going to talk about that. But mental health of workers, of employees, is definitely a big topic within the talent management community. The Generation Z and the newer generations actually spending very little times on their job. They're moving around quite quickly. They're finding new employers very fast after they sign their contract. They stay on for a while. they make an experience and then they move on elsewhere. So this is something where, again, this major imperative comes in to keep employees in the organization, keep them engaged with new tasks, new skills, and new responsibilities in a great work environment. Remote working obviously is a topic, and here you might have seen the comments of Mr. Elon Musk about all of the workers in Tesla needing to come back to the company, come back to the factories. So he and some other companies are going this very extreme way. Other companies are going other ways. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Next slide, please. So what I really see by looking at all these trends and developments that we see in the market for talent management is that there's 4 different imperatives that really make that digital talent management, as we see it for HR practitioners today, make it successful, right? So those 4 imperatives would be, number 1, to revisit upskilling, because really you can't build skills enough. Skills are changing so quickly. You can see the quote here from Gartner, and again, I'm quoting Gartner, same as Ms. Ollie did before, but 40% of the HR leaders say that they can't rebuild skill fast enough. Secondly, maximizing flexibility and wellness in organizations. Our own study that we have run at Oracle is called AI at Work, and we heard from respondents, from employees in organizations, that 77% of them are feeling stuck in their personal lives and 78% feeling stuck in their professional lives. So we really need to make sure that they don't feel stuck, that they feel motivated, passionate, energized, empowered, and really have that flexibility in the mental well-being. Leveraging technology, McKinsey is saying that automation AI investments have accelerated by 67% since the pandemic. So definitely how to use your technology for HR practitioners is absolutely imperative. And then crafting employee experiences. McKinsey tells us that workers with a positive experience in the workplace are much more engaged, 16 times more engaged and 8 times more likely to stay. So that might really be the answer to quite a number of the challenges that we are facing today. Next slide, please. So let me jump into revisiting upskilling first and just go through that, give you a little bit more detail. Next slide. So before we go into that, I do have a couple of slides in here where I say, you see that little box that says ask yourself. So if you want, you can think and ask for yourself the answer to this question. If you want, you can put it into the chat box as well. Unfortunately, there's no prize for this, but still, I would love to see your responses. So give it a shot. How many of the skills in percent in job requisitions, so in job descriptions, 4 years ago are no longer relevant today? So think about job descriptions from 4 years ago and all the skills that are listed in there. How many of those do you believe are no longer relevant as of today? Okay, think about it for 1 second if you want to put into the chat. Okay, guys here have put it up on the screen already. I would have asked for it. It's actually more than 30%, almost 1/3 of the skills 4 years ago are no longer relevant today. So that is an astonishing number. It means that the skills that employees are having are disappearing and new skills are coming up constantly. So it is absolutely critical and imperative for organizations to keep their employees upskilled, to reskill them if possible, but also the employees understand that. The employees do know that their skills become irrelevant and that they need to upskill in order to stay relevant in the workplace and find a new job, maybe find a new career, maybe in the organization or outside. So it's an imperative for organizations to change that. Next slide. So there's actually an interesting study, and I put a QR code here on the screen. I'm happy to share the link after the presentation with the organization team here as well, if you can't scan that with your mobile phone. But Cognizant has actually run a study, and I want to give you this study result here as an example of how skills are changing in the field of HR. You all know the field of HR, but they have said basically there's 21 jobs for the future of HR, and they label them based on level of centricity, tech centricity and the time when they will appear. And you can see some of those skills here, or those new jobs that will come into pass, like a working from home facilitator, a leader of future of work, a human network analyst, a genetic diversity officer. So all of these are critical new roles that do not exist at this point in time. But looking at the future of work, the way that work is being handled in the future, these roles might as well be relevant. And all the new skills that you need to have to fill those roles become critical in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. So with that, I just wanted to go back very fundamentally to skills and talk a little bit about what is important. Now, generally, I would say there's 4 different areas or categories of skill that we deem are very critical for employees to have. It's technical, digital, soft, and agile skills. Now, technical skills is those hardwired skills to do your job, to know the ins and outs, the technicalities of it. This is something where there's a lot of courses on it, a lot of on-the-job learning, and this field is typically well covered by organizations. But now we're looking into other skills, and that is digital, soft, and agile skills. And Ms. Ollie was talking before about power skills, and it's something like that. It's probably relatively similar. I'm just not using the same term. But what it is those terms that really are critically human, and that is, say, soft skills, to deal with each other, deal with a diverse workforce, a workforce that consists of people that are young and old, from, of course, 2 different genders, but also from employees that are permanently employed and those that are just gig workers, or those that are working remotely versus those that are working in the office. So there's a lot of diversity in the workplace that is happening, and humans, workers, need those skills, those soft skills, to actually address those challenges. Also, we need digital skills, all of us, absolutely, because who is going to operate all that technology and make it work in the right context and leverage the benefits of it? So it is absolutely critical and imperative for all the workers, whether they work in an IT function or technology-related function or in a back office function that seems to have nothing to do with technology. It is critical to have at least a certain level of digital skills to survive these days. And then we need agile skills. So every employer, every worker, in order to stay relevant, in order to think outside of the box, come up with new solutions to a changing business environment and stay innovative, we all need agile skills. And at the same time, HR needs to be agile to respond to those changes. Now, those are all the different skills that we can think of that are coming together and really making employees ready for the future in terms of upskilling and reskilling. And on top of that, organizations need to nurture a culture of continuous learning where everybody wants to continuously thrive, get better, learn new skills, and share them with each other. Next slide, please. Now, in all of my imperatives that I'm talking about, I'm also going to talk briefly about how Oracle can help specifically on those particular things. Now, here's one of the solutions, and I'm not going to go into too much of detail here, but one of the things that our customers have come back to us and told us is that it's very, very difficult for HR to keep the skill repository up to date because the skills are changing frequently. So what we have developed is a tool that is called Oracle Dynamic Skills. And what it does, it browses publicly available internet sites like job portals, like competency frameworks and the like. And it constantly lists out new skills, categorizes them, and puts them into a repository that organizations can then use. So what is that good for? Well, first, it takes away the job from HR to constantly stay up to date on the latest relevant skills because it's already done by the tool. But secondly, it helps employees to find out what are the skills in my job? What are the skills of the future? What do I need to learn in the future to stay relevant and fill those new jobs that we saw before? And for the HR department, it's also a great help because if you're filling a job requisition, you're hiring for a new job, or you're building a new competency framework, then you can absolutely leverage this. Or when you design a new course, a learning, a career path, then you can leverage a dynamic skills library. So this is something that we are very excited to bring to the market. Next slide, please. I just wanted to tell, and also Ms. Ollie was talking about Josh Person before. He's actually talked about this particular dynamic skills library, and there's a link here to the article from Josh Person. If you want to read that, there's also an audio version of that, so you can also download that. So please do. I just wanted to have that included into my slides. Next slide, please. And then Ms. Oli was also talking, and I was laughing a little bit when I saw that, about the Netflix approach to talent management, because I have the pretty much same approach here. But I'm going to talk about upskilling and reskilling still. And you all know what Netflix is about. If you're a child, you might be looking at this particular slide here, where you see a lot of like cartoons and children movies in your Netflix, because that is who you are. You are young of age. You're taking an interest in these things. Now, why don't we apply the same thing to a learning scenario for our employees? Next slide, please. Because that is what we are trying to do in Oracle's learning software. So we're basically saying we're looking at the demographics and the career stage of our employees, or the employees of our clients. And based on that, we're giving them learning recommendations. So if somebody is based on-site or off-site, if somebody is male or female, in a higher career stage or lower career stage, has just started the job or is very deep into the organization already, you can cater the recommendations in terms of what they should be learning. It shouldn't be the same content for everybody. This system should be smart enough to learn, understand, and then give you the right recommendations for the goals that you have as an employee, and then cater that content that will help you to get there. Next slide, please. I want to talk about the second imperative, and this is about maximizing well-being and flexibility. Next slide, please. So it is really critical to look at employee health and well-being. There's a very recent study from Mercer that says that 81% of workers are actually burned out. I believe it was an US-American study, but still the message stands. There's a lot of people that, in particular in a hybrid working from home environment, with all the challenges that we had during the pandemic and the lack of personal interaction and human contact, are suffering from severe mental stress and even burnouts. So this is definitely one of the topics where we need to take care of our employees. We need to ensure that they are mentally sane, that they are not stressed, and that they are empowered to deliver the work. And then also provide workplace flexibility. Actually, many employees are quite uncertain about the flexibility levels that they will see in the future. 45% of them stated that the biggest challenge remains for them. They don't know when to come into the office and when to stay at home. So many organizations have very flexible policies now around working from home, but what is the right thing for the employee to do? When to come to the office? What is the right thing to do, even though the policy might suggest otherwise? So those are things that create uncertainty and then again have a negative impact on the mental health of the employee. Next slide, please. So talking about mental health and well-being, this is a slide that I have borrowed from the colleagues from Deloitte that basically talks about what you should do in an organization if you want to design your organization for the optimized mental health and well-being, to be the optimized mental health and well-being spot for employees. Because this is also something that needs to be part of your employer branding, and your employees want to talk about that and how well they are being taken care of. So what Deloitte is basically saying is that you should look at all the different aspects in an organization, the cultural ones, the operational ones, relational ones, physical aspects, and the virtual aspects, and then look at them from a wide lens, organizational, to a team lens, and then to an individual lens, and look at all these aspects in that matrix and ensure that they are optimized for the well-being and the mental health of your employees. So that could be, if you're looking at the cultural aspects and the team dimension, that you're modeling well-being behaviors, such as taking micro breaks from your work, only and only making certain of the meetings video focused. So this is just a small thing that you can do. But if you're looking at all those different dimensions on the screen here, there's lots of aspects where you can really zoom in and you can try to find those little things that you can change to make your workplace better from a mental health and well-being perspective. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to workplace flexibility, Ms. Oli before, she was talking a bit about flexibility, and obviously it is up to the organization and the business that they are operating to offer flexibility to the extent that that makes sense, right? So for you as PLN, I do understand that you have a lot of blue-collar workers, you have a lot of workers on site, and obviously it's not quite as simple for you to offer flexible working arrangements and working from home. But at the same time, I also feel a need to tell you that if there's options, employees have the choice. And that's why I wanted to invite you to a little thought experiment here. And I have this lady here, call her Alyssa. Alyssa is a software engineer. Software engineering is a job that is very high in demand. And she's looking for a new job. And she gets 3 offers. Job offer 1 is from Rigid Corporation. It is in Jakarta. The basic salary is the same across all of the 3 offers. The tasks, the job requirements are the same across all of the 3 requirements. But in the first offer, she needs to work from 9 to 6, from Monday to Friday, and she needs to be in the office. The second offer she gets, everything is the same, just the working hours are a bit more flexible, still Monday to Friday, but she only needs to be in the office two times per week. And the third job offer is from Future Ready Limited. Same salary, same tasks, working hours are flexible. Work week is flexible. She can work on Saturdays and Sundays. Physical attendance is voluntary. She can work remotely or she can be in the office. The work location is flexible. She can work in Jakarta, but she can also be in Bali or somewhere else if she pleases to. Now, I'm just doing this as a hypothetical experiment. Which job do you think she will choose? Very likely, Alyssa is going to choose the job that is giving her the most amount of flexibility because she has all the other benefits. That's why I'm just telling you, it is imperative to look for options of flexibility and give them to the employees to the extent that you can, because if you don't, your competitors will actually do that, right? So next slide, please. I just wanted to give you a thought experiment to kind of like visualize that a little bit, what is happening on the employee market and how that war for talent is going to play out. There's different approaches that different organizations are taking, from fully remote on the left-hand side. If you know that logo, you probably have it as an icon on your phone. That is Spotify, the music streaming service. They said, we are paying employees New York salaries and we let them remotely work from anywhere they want. Same for Salesforce. That is the general direction that they have given. Now, not every organization can do that. I fully understand that. We as Oracle ourselves, we are somewhere in the middle. We have a hybrid approach. We are invited to the office about 1 or 2 times per week, but at the same time, we have flexibility also. And then you have your Tesla and your Goldman Sachs that are saying, please, you need to come back to the office. Otherwise, you're not welcome to work in this organization anymore. That's literally what Elon Musk has tweeted. So find your own approach that works for your organization, but I recommend to offer some flexibility because your competition on the labor market will probably do that. And then the 2 boxes at the bottom here of my screen is LinkedIn has a new functionality. If people are looking for a job, they can search for remote jobs. So they can search for those jobs that they don't have to do from an office, from a particular city, but they can be flexible in terms of where they want to work. And then there's companies, startups like Deal. Deal is helping organizations to arrange for this remote working arrangement, even across country borders. So if you, as an Indonesian organization, want to offer jobs in another country or remote working in other countries, that company is helping you. I'm not advertising for them. What I'm doing is I'm basically telling you that this is something that is here to stay, and it is something that will shape the talent management market of the future. Next slide. Again, a quick solution from Oracle. One of the things when it comes to employee mental health and well-being that also Ms. Ollie mentioned before in her presentation is to no longer really, do an annual survey and check in with your people once per year. That is something that you can still do, but one of the things that you want to do is you want to check in continuously. You want to listen to them, you want to ask for their feedback. So we have one solution that is called Touch Points, which basically works mobile enabled. You can send to the mobile phone to your workers, how are you feeling today? What are your concerns? What are the things that you want to give us in terms of a feedback? And then that feedback from the mobile phone gets collated into a report that the manager gets that looks a bit like what you see on the screen here that tells them, hey, your team overall is doing fine, but there's a few people that seem to be in a bad state of mind where you need to maybe have some conversation with them. Maybe you need to drive some corrective action with them and, change something in their work environment so that they can become more satisfied and more engaged and don't leave you ultimately. So that's called Oracle Touchpoints. I'm happy to share more about that if you want to reach out to me after the presentation. Next slide, please. Obviously, you want to leverage technology as an HR practitioner. Next slide, please. And for us being Oracle, we need to talk about technology a little bit, but I think it's undebated. So again, I wanted to invite you to a little thought experiment. Take a moment and think about what do these 8 people here on the screen have in common. Just take a moment. I'm going to take a sip of my water, and you guys can think about what do these 8 people have in common. Okay, so if you looked at these people, you probably thought, actually, all of them have a very nice smile, and they're all looking very friendly, but that's not what I meant. In fact, and this is a bit of a fun experiment, none of these people on the screen here are real people. These are not photographs of real people. These people do not exist. What this is a page on the internet that is called thispersondoesnotexist.com. And what is behind that page is an artificial intelligence that has been fed with thousands and thousands of pictures of people and is then taken artificial intelligence and created additional faces of people that do not exist. And you see 8 of them here on the screen today. Now, you might be surprised, and I was surprised too when I saw that web page. It's very interesting. You can have a look at it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that as HR practitioners, we say that we understand people, but we really need to understand also what is the role of technology and what can artificial intelligence do for us. Next slide, please. So the role of artificial intelligence has really accelerated, and it does a lot of things for the HR function. So I've listed a couple of examples here. When you're in a recruiting function, artificial intelligence can screen candidates, obviously, and also remove the bias that human reviewers might have when they are looking at CVs. So it just filters all that out and gives you the best candidate in a shortlist. In terms of learning, I mentioned before, it can suggest courses or learning paths. In terms of HR inquiries, it can be automated. And I'm going to show you how that works in a moment. And then when it comes to a very basic thing such as payroll, artificial intelligence and machine learning can actually go in there and can do automated fraud detection using smart algorithms. So it actually makes sure that any anomalies that are happening in sensitive areas, such as payroll, will be filtered out and flagged up to human people who again look at it and can flag that up or raise it up for the attention of others wherever that is required. Next slide, please. In fact, the humans are open for the technology. So we've done that study, artificial intelligence at work, and one of the responses that I found very surprising myself is that 88% of those responses, and this is from across the world, including a lot of respondents from Asia, say 88% of these employees say they believe that robots can support their careers better than a human being. And you might be really surprised by that. Why would a robot be better at supporting a career? But if you think about it for a moment, a robot or a very good chatbot or an artificial intelligence has some significant advantages. And those are that he or she is unbiased. If you ask your robot, what are my career options? You don't need to have to justify that you are still 1 year in your new job or that maybe you're just a new joiner and you're already asking for new career opportunities. The robot is not going to judge you. It's a resource repository that is sheer endless with all the information that you can feed in there. Nothing a human could ever memorize, but a robot can do that. And it's available 24/7. If on Sunday night I think about my next career move, I can go in there and I can ask that question, right? So this is where robots and artificial intelligence can help. I absolutely say that human beings have their role here and they need to have sensible conversations and can help, but robots can do a lot of the legwork. Let me give you an example. Let's move to the next slide. So this here is basically an example of Oracle's digital assistant. And as I'm speaking, you can see in the hand is this mobile phone, and there's a person in here that is actually typing something in here. So PLN team, you have just stopped the video. Can you please restart the video? Yeah, there you go. Okay, very good. So that person is basically just typing in, I got married, and it's an employee in an organization. And the bot says, congratulations, when did you get married? And then there's a conversation happening where the bot is asking a couple of questions about the date of marriage and if the person wants to change their marital status, and then the conversation continues between the two. Now, this is like a human interaction. The employee now doesn't need to go into the system and click in the system and find where's the marital status and where can I change that. It can just do that in a conversational way as it would do it with an HR representative. Now she's inquiring about COVID. So there's a couple of responses about that. Other questions that we see is, what is my leave balance? What's my inpatient medical coverage? What's my manager's cell number? All of those things can be answered by a digital chatbot. No human being needs to be around and, spend some of the time on such operational questions. Next slide, please. The same chatbot actually can also be very helpful for HR users. So you can see here on this screen an example of how an HR user is going in and says, show me the headcount gains and losses by gender and by job family. And then the system basically spits out and says, here's by the different departments that we have, here's the headcount losses and gains that you requested for. But not only that, it also gives some additional insights. And it says, hey, actually the data here shows something very significant. 50% of the overall losses come from 4 departments. And here's the names of the departments. So it not only gives you the statistics, it also gives you insights. And for you as an HR practitioner, and that's again something that Ms. Ollie mentioned before, you need to be business relevant. So you can take that data and you can go back to the business and you can talk to them about it, give them these insights and really act as HR like a business partner. Next slide, please. The last of the 4 imperatives that I want to talk about is crafting experiences. And this is really absolutely critical to every organization that is trying to win the war for talent, keep employees in the organization, attract them to the organization, and make them be engaged. So whenever I hear the term employee experience, it sounds a bit like a made-up artificial term, but what does it actually mean? Next slide, please. So then before we get to that, there's a good number of research that has gone into employee experience and that is talking about it. I talked about McKinsey before, how the positive employee experience is more likely to have employees engage and likely to have them stay in the organization. But also here's a quote from the Senior Director of HR Operations of McDonald's, Mike Oldham, who said that a great experience starts with what's near and dear to people. We're showing empathy, caring, understanding the needs and desires of the employees. So in another way, it is treating employees as humans and give them an employee experience that is critical. Many organizations are very good at providing a good customer experience, but they fail to do a good employee experience. And this is something where we have to go the extra mile and really do something to elevate the employee experience in our organization. Next slide, please. So what could those experiences be? It could be when you're getting onboarded as an employee, when you're building your network, when you're finding your connections, when you seek new information in your organization, when you're learning a new skill or you want to advance your career plan for your next career move, when you're experiencing some trouble, you have mental health issues, you have stress, maybe you're suffering from a burnout. How does your organization react? When you want to give feedback on things that are happening in the organization, when you want to be listened to and understood, or simply when you want to stay safe. All of these things are experiences, and they are absolutely critical to employees. And what we are advocating as Oracle is that you go out and you look at your whole employee life cycle, from hiring to retiring, and you look at every single piece of interaction between employees and employer, and you design those interactions that they are perfect for an employee experience that is absolutely remarkable, that people will talk about. Because what happens if they have a bad experience? They will feel neglected, they will not be engaged, ultimately they will leave, and even worse, they will talk to their friends and family about the bad experience that they had. But if you have employees that are happy, that are strongly engaged, then they will really become advocates for your organization. They will talk positively about it and create a great culture in your organization and contribute to positively to your overall productivity. So this is really something that you need to take very, very serious. I want to talk about an example for my own employee experience. To the next slide, please. So this is in conjunction with technology. When I joined Oracle a good 2 years ago, I had a lot of questions, like every employee. And Oracle is a large organization, and it's sometimes a bit hard to find your way around this very extensive network of people and technology that is there for you to use. But I was recommended to use our own system that I was talking to you a bit about today, Oracle Cloud HCM. And whenever I had a question about where to update my personal details, where to find my coworkers and their contact details and their titles and background, or when I wanted to look at my career opportunities, file for my leave, or manage my own team that I have, or file an expense claim, or buy something simple like an additional monitor or a mouse for my laptop, the only answer that I got back from everybody was just go to Oracle Cloud HCM, just go to the one system, you'll find everything in one place. And I went in there and I simply found it so that I stopped asking people and I started just going into the system and just finding it myself because it was so simple. Now, what is that? It's a great employee experience for me that technology has enabled me to. Of course, I'm biased. Of course, I believe this is a great product, but I'm just telling you that I genuinely thought this was a good experience that I really liked and something that I wanted to share with you. Next slide, please. So just wanted to spend the last 2 or 3 minutes of my presentation talking to you about how Oracle can help. Next slide, please. I just wanted to leave you a little bit with what this tool is about that I was talking about, Oracle Cloud HCM. You might have heard of Oracle Me. This is the way that we are going to market right now. It's our branding of our tool, which is basically an employee experience tool. Oracle Me stands for My Experience. And we really believe that we can deliver fantastic employee experiences with this tool, the way that it can communicate to the employees, it listens to the employees, it gives them advice, it helps them, and really acts fantastically at the intersection between the HR team, the business, and the employees. It covers everything from the hiring to retiring, as I mentioned before. It's a native cloud solution that works for many organizations seamlessly already for many years. Works on any device or browser. So specifically for a blue-collar environment like PLN's, it absolutely is a fantastic tool to use. It is built on a single source of data, a single source of truth, has analytics built across the whole of all of the solutions, and is built on the best practices that we saw and we heard from our clients on a global level. Now, what does that look like? Can we switch to the next slide? Just want you to have a quick look at that video here for 2 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up for my presentation today. Can we hear the audio? All right, thank you very much. I hope that gave you a little bit of a glimpse of what our solution looks like. I just listed out here a couple of the logos of organizations that are trusting us with this solution. I put one in here from Indonesia, which is Transjakarta. It just recently decided to move on to Oracle Cloud HCM. And we do have quite a number of other customers here across the region. If you want to talk to them, please reach out to me and we can arrange for that. All right, with that, I want to conclude, and I actually have to apologize for being a little bit more salesy at the back of my presentation, but it is my job from Oracle to also bring across the best of our solution for the benefit of our potential clients. So I hope you apologize me for that, but I still hope you enjoyed the findings and the sharing that I did today. And with that, I just want to pass it back to Pak Jo.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Joe, for your excellent presentation. Very interesting and very up to date. All right.
Thank you very much for giving me the time to share.
Now we will move to the question and answer session. Baik, Bapak Ibu, kita lanjut ke sesi diskusi dan tanya jawab. Kembali saya berikan kesempatan kepada senior leaders untuk bertanya terhadap topik yang telah disampaikan oleh Mr. Joe barusan. Dipersilahkan. Oke. Oke, sambil menunggu, kita coba masuk ke sesi berikutnya, yaitu pertanyaan dari saya dulu. Like before, I use my privilege as a moderator again to asking a question. My question is, I believe you already know about PLN, an energy or electricity company in Indonesia. And many workers who work shoot from their places, like operator, working in shift, working on site, standby for 24 hours, and something like that. What do you think if PLN want to maximizing well-being and flexibility? What is the most priority to improve?
Right. I mean, I do know PLN obviously, but I do not exactly know what you have done already for your workers. So I can only answer that question a bit generically. I would say generally for blue collar workers, it's very important to keep it simple and convenient for them when it comes for well-being. So what you want to do is not long hour programs. It needs to be like really bite-sized, like Ms. Polly mentioned before, kind of like on the micro level that you can do bite-sized learning and bite-sized enjoyment of those wellness activities as well. So easily accessible in line with the working schedule. You need to reach the people where they are, make use of the mobile phones that they have. And the mobility, pay some respect to that. When it comes to flexibility, obviously, I mentioned before, it's not quite as easy for an organization like PLN, but there are things that you can do in this environment as well. And that would be try to allow for flexibility when they can start and end their day. Maybe you can make shift changes easier, allow them for variable shift length options. Maybe there's options to allow them for part-time work. So there's a lot of ideas that you could have in terms of wellness and also flexibility that you would need to explore and then prioritize.
Thank you for the answer, Mr. Joe. And the next question is from the audience.
Okay.
The first question from the audience is from Jabar Pasaribu, Bapak Jabar Pasaribu. He is from PLN Kantor Pusat, Head Office. The question is, in the flexible location paradigm, in order to implement human experience management, how does the company maintain its commitment in promise the location to the employees?
Sorry, the last part of the question again. How do you maintain?
How does the company maintain its commitment in promising the location to the employees?
Right. Okay. Well, I guess I'm not sure if I can properly answer that question because it also is, it requires you to look at the requirements of Indonesian labor law and the governance around that. So I was just giving a generic sharing before and talking about that. Obviously, flexibility is something that we should and could offer to the employees if we can. But at the same time, it really cannot be done if you are in an environment like yours, where it's a blue-collar environment and people need to be positioned in specific work sites or factories where they have specific tasks and operations that they would need to do. Obviously, if ever you can manage those things to be done on a remote basis, then you can do you can facilitate some flexibility around that. But in that blue-collar environment that I see you are in, I would fall back on the things that I mentioned before and try to look at smaller things that you can change to increase the flexibility while maintaining that location promise that the lady is talking about.
The answer, Mr. Jo. Go to the next question from Harisnu Kurniawan. He is from Human Capital Development Area 9. The question is, according your opinion, what is the most essential skill that the new generation of worker needed to shape the organization's future?
Yeah, so remember before I was sharing about the 4 different skills: technical, soft skills, the digital skills, and agile skills. Now, while all 4 of them are very, very important, I would actually underline agile skills here. Why? Because with an agile skill or an agile mindset, every single employee and worker will be ready for the future, whatever comes. Because if you are ready, you're agile, you're open to new solutions, you're innovative, and you don't rest on what you know and what you can, then obviously that gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility to respond to the future environment, and you will be the first choice as an employee to be positioned for new roles and new challenges in the organization. So I think this is also what I alluded to in terms of the continuous learning mindset. As an organization, what you need to do is to encourage your employees to be continuous learners, to be open to new knowledge, continuously try to improve yourself, upgrade yourself, upskill yourself to stay relevant in the future of work. And this is what I believe is the most important out of the skills that I've mentioned.
Okay, very clear, Mr. Jo. And we go to the last question for Mr. Jo. And the question is from Muhammad Nur Fajri. He is from Head Office, Human Capital Development, Area 4. The question is, in hybrid working, how Oracle evaluating the efficiencies of the implementation and how to monitor the employees keep giving their best shot with less supervising?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Same as the ones before. I forgot to mention and say thank you for those questions as well. No, this really goes back to, I guess, basic human resources principles and of managing people by the right objectives. So, and not only in Oracle, I guess many organizations are facing the same problem when they have people working in a remote setup. It is probably a bit tough for some organizations, but it means stepping away from the principle of oversight, basically meaning looking at the employee. If he or she spends 8 hours in the office, they will have done their job. But it is managing them based on goals, based on expectations that you have as an organization, as a manager, and communicating those expectations down the line, articulating clear performance indicators that people have to achieve before, they have successfully done their job. If we're educating our leadership, if we're educating our management to do that in the right way, then then they will apply that in their day-to-day with their teams and the people that they're leading. And we will step away slowly from monitoring people in order to achieve performance to managing them by setting the right objectives. And not only is that a way that works in a hybrid environment or in a remote environment, but it's also much better for employee engagement because you're ultimately trusting your employees with responsibility and you're giving them freedom to achieve the performance without monitoring them. And I think this is something invaluable. This is actually something very positive that comes from the pandemic and the remote working situation. But it is a change, and I understand that. I recognize that. So it takes all of us to learn about managing people right by objectives instead of monitoring them on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Based on objective and give freedom the employees to achieve that. Okay. Thank you for the answer, Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Pak Jo.
Baik, kita tutup sesi 2 ini dengan sebuah kuis lagi. Dan silakan menjawab melalui kolom chat dan pertanyaannya adalah di bawah ini merupakan 4 critical skills yang dibutuhkan oleh tomorrow's employee. A. Digital skills. B. Agile skills. C. Soft skills. D. Semua benar. Silakan ditulis pada kolom chat. Kami berikan kesempatan kurang lebih 20 detik. Pemenang kuis akan mendapatkan hadiah menarik dari PLN Corporate University. Senior leaders dan PLNers, dari paparan yang kedua ini kita sudah terima inspirasi yang luar biasa dari Mr. Joe. Adapun poin-poin yang dapat kita simpulkan adalah ada 4 hal yang perlu menjadi perhatian dalam mengembangkan digital talent management. Yaitu yang pertama adalah revisit upskilling, meninjau kembali kesesuaian skill dengan future of work. Yang kedua, maximize well-being dan flexibility, yaitu mendesain lingkungan kerja yang fleksibel dan mendukung well-being pegawai. Yang ketiga, leveraging technology, yaitu dengan memanfaatkan teknologi dalam proses operasional organisasi. Dan yang terakhir, keempat, crafting experience, memberikan lebih dari sekedar pengalaman kerja, yaitu lebih bermakna bagi personal value pegawai. Baiklah, selesai sudah pemaparan materi dari sesi kedua ini. Kita berikan apresiasi tepuk tangan kepada Mr. Joe yang sudah sharing di sesi kedua ini. Thank you, Mr. Joe. I also really appreciate for your presence and sharing in this event. Wishing you more success in the years to come. Thank you so
very much. Thanks for having me.
Senior leaders dan PLNers, terima kasih atas perhatian dan partisipasinya dalam acara Human Capital Insight Series 3 tahun 2022 pada hari ini. Tentu saja terima kasih dan apresiasi kita berikan kepada teman-teman PLN Corpu dan UPDL Banjarbaru yang telah dengan sangat baik mengorganisir acara kita kali ini. Jalan-jalan ke Salatiga, pulangnya singgah ke Tasikmalaya. Demikian HC Insight Series 3, sampai jumpa pada HC Insight seri berikutnya. Wabillahi taufik wal hidayah, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya kembalikan ke Mbak Eva.
Luar biasa sekali pantunnya Pak Giovany. Terima kasih Pak Giovany yang sudah memandu kedua sesi bersama narasumber dengan sangat menarik. Sekali lagi terima kasih. Baik, Bapak Ibu PLNers yang kami hormati, kami juga ucapkan terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya kepada Mrs. Norlida Azmi dan Mr. Johannes Eckold. Thanks for joining this event, sharing knowledge and experience with us. Untuk meningkatkan kompetensi talent, PLN Corpu berkomitmen untuk terus mengembangkan pembelajaran digital, baik secara formal learning maupun informal learning, yang salah satunya adalah melalui podcast. Saat ini, PLN Corpu Podcast menghadirkan series podcast Tata Nilai Akhlak dan Budaya Perusahaan dari unit kerja yang merupakan juara Culture Festival tahun 2021, yaitu SPI, UIW Aceh, PJB, serta dari Divisi Budaya Kantor Pusat. PLNers dapat langsung login melalui DigiLearn dan PLN Corpu Podcast yang bisa diunduh aplikasinya di App Store dan Play Store. Bapak dan Ibu PLNers, mari kita berikan aplaus sekali lagi kepada moderator dan para narasumber kita hari ini. Tidak terasa saat ini kita sudah di penghujung acara dan ini dia agenda yang ditunggu-tunggu. Sebagaimana janji kami di awal, kami akan mengumumkan siapa-siapa saja pertanyaan terpilih dan pemenang kuis. Sepanjang pemaparan materi berlangsung, kami menerima banyak sekali pertanyaan dan jawaban kuis yang luar biasa. Berikut 10 pemenang pertanyaan terpilih dan kuis, sebagaimana tampil di layar Bapak dan Ibu. Selamat kepada pemenang. Tim akan segera menghubungi Bapak dan Ibu. Sekali lagi saya ucapkan selamat kepada pemenang dan tim kami nanti akan segera menghubungi Bapak dan Ibu pemenangnya. Dengan demikian, maka usai sudah rangkaian seminar Human Capital Insight seri 3 tahun 2022, New Paradigm of Talent Management, Jakarta, Selasa 26 Juli 2022. Kami sampaikan terima kasih kepada seluruh jajaran direksi yang hadir, moderator, kedua narasumber, serta seluruh Bapak Ibu rekan-rekan PLNers yang telah bergabung menyaksikan melalui Zoom maupun streaming YouTube. Besar harapan Human Capital Insight seri 3 tahun ini bermanfaat untuk kita semua. Sampai berjumpa kembali di Human Capital Insight seri 4 dengan judul Influencing Sustainable Energy Behavior in Strengthen People Intrinsic Motivation. Tentunya bersama narasumber yang sudah sangat berpengalaman dan luar biasa. Akhirnya, jalan-jalan ke Yunani, jangan lupa ke Santorini. Demikian acara hari ini, saya Eva, mohon izin undur diri. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, terima kasih dan sampai jumpa.
Dengan jumlah pegawai lebih dari 53.000 dan tenaga kerja total sekitar 186.000 orang, pengelolaan sumber daya manusia di PLN Group dilakukan secara digital dengan sistem yang disebut Human Experience Management System. Sistem ini dirancang untuk mengembangkan potensi terbaik pegawai dalam mendorong bisnis di PLN Group yang berpusat pada values dan experiences. Dua hal ini kemudian di-cascading untuk menghasilkan 4R, yaitu right size, right skill, right spend, dan right system. PLN Group juga telah memiliki peta jalan pengembangan human capital sampai dengan tahun 2025. Dengan visi menjadi perusahaan listrik terkemuka se-Asia Tenggara dan nomor 1 pilihan pelanggan untuk solusi energi, transformasi human capital PLN sangatlah vital. Karena keberhasilan mewujudkan visi tersebut ditentukan oleh pengelolaan dan pengembangan manusianya.
Tuntutlah ilmu sampai ke negeri Cina. Ilmu kok dituntut?
Ilmu tuh nggak perlu dituntut, ilmu tuh dipelajari. Kayak gini.